Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin tonight in Nunavut, where the search continues for a missing teenager in Pond Inlet. RCMPs say Rico Akpaliapik was last seen on October 2nd. The 15-year-old was wearing a gray hoodie, black pants, and shoes when he disappeared. The police, Hamlet, and Nunavut government are all involved in the search. Pond Inlet RCMP want anyone with information on his whereabouts to get in contact. Yukon RCMP say they have found the body of a man who went missing in the Yukon River last month. The Arizona man was traveling south of the Alaska Highway with a friend when their truck went off the road and into the water. Nate Ostenso has been missing since September 16th. His friend was able to get to shore. For several days, police searched the river with divers as well as by boat and helicopter. RCMP says the coroner's office is now investigating. An autopsy has been ordered as well. Police say the investigation is ongoing and no further details will be released. The accident involved 2 adult men who were hauling vehicles from Alaska to Arizona. The Northwest Territories' Chief Public Health Officer is warning residents who had dental care work done in several Beaufort Delta communities last spring. She says they should get tested for HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C. The health officer says people in the affected communities may have undergone procedures with equipment that wasn't properly cleaned, disinfected, and sterilized. If you had dental care done with instruments in the following communities between March 21st and April 29th of this year, you should get tested. Those communities are Aklavik, Fort McPherson, Paulatuk, Sax Harbor, and Uluhaktok. Cami Kendola's office isn't releasing any further information right now, other than to say that the risk is considered low. An investigation into what happened continues. Earlier this year, CBC asked the NWT Department of Health and Social Services which dental clinics visited communities in 2024. The dates of these incidents match with visits by Western Arctic Dental Clinic based in Nunavut. In the NWT, mining companies are gearing up for potential changes. The upcoming Mineral Resources Act could change how they work with Indigenous groups, and the companies are worried. The act was passed in 2019, and it'll govern mining and exploration in the Northwest Territories. A GNWT official says an initial draft is expected to be released by the end of 2024. The CBC's Nadir Hashmi has the story.
If a company wants to mine in the NWT, it has to work with Indigenous groups. That means signing Impact Benefit Agreements, or IBAs. They include benefits in terms of jobs, contracts, or business opportunities for affected communities. And the government's new Mineral Resources Act could require them to pay out more. A GNWT official says companies are unhappy about the uncertainty around renegotiating IBAs. Recently, Burgundy Diamond Mines, which owns Ekati Diamond Mine, raised concerns about the IBAs in a letter to Premier R.J. Simpson. In it, Burgundy wrote that if it's required to renegotiate its IBAs, it could further erode Ekati's financial viability. It asked NWT government to provide assurance that the existing agreements could be accepted as is. The GNWT says under the new act, existing agreements could change, but it's up to the Indigenous groups. And if they want to keep the agreement as is, they can.
So it's really the field is wide open in terms of the types of agreements reached between Indigenous governments and industry in order for those projects to go forward and produce and sell their minerals.
A former MLA says he'd been vocal about the mining companies' access to the government officials developing these regulations.
They were having secret private meetings with the mining industry over and over again and making information available to them that was not available to the public.
O'Reilly is also the former executive director of the watchdog agency that oversees environmental management at the Ekati Diamond Mine. He says the territorial government rarely urges mining companies to make significant changes.
I would find it very hard to believe that the company would be forced to renegotiate impact and benefit agreements. I just don't think that's going to happen.
O'Reilly says it will be clearer when the actual regulation will be released. Nadir Hashmi, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Members from the Northwest Territories Council of Leaders are continuing their meetings in Ottawa today. It's the first time the council has traveled as a group to the capital. The council is made up of NWT representatives and Indigenous leaders. It identified several priorities for this trip, including infrastructure.
Yeah, we have a number of major infrastructure projects in the territory that we are working to advance. The Mackenzie Valley Highway is one. There's the Tulsan Hydro expansion, and then there's a number of other projects as well. And the government of the Northwest Territories is the proponent on and pushing a number of these projects, and Indigenous governments have their own projects that they would like to see advanced as well. And we have seen reception in Ottawa to some of these projects. I had a good meeting with the Prime Minister about the Mackenzie Valley Highway. There was discussion about Tulsan, the expansion of our hydro system in the Northwest Territories to enhance access to green technology for residents and for industry. And there has been consistent funding over the years from Ottawa for those projects. What we would like is an approach that recognizes the North is small. We don't always have the capacity to advance these major, in some cases, billion or multi-billion-dollar projects on our own. And we would really like a solution tailored for the North so that the federal government is able to work with us as partners, because we are partners with the federal government. We always have been, same with the Indigenous governments. The territory, it's covered by land claims, either settled or unsettled, and there's three partners at that table: the Indigenous governments, Canada, and the government of the Northwest Territories. And that flows into everything that we do. And so those partnerships are very important, and I'm hopeful that Ottawa will continue to be supportive, and that we will see enhanced supports in this upcoming budget.
Other priorities include emergency planning, cost of living, and housing. The delegation began meeting with federal officials on Monday and will continue those conversations tomorrow. Simpson also says he'll be in Iqaluit later this week alongside the other northern premiers. They will meet with ministers to discuss the federal government's Arctic security strategy. The Yukon NDP is criticizing the government for its treatment of the territory's two healthcare unions. The unions recently announced they were leaving the Health and Human Resources Steering Committee. In a joint statement, the union said they felt their inclusion in the committee was, quote, largely symbolic.
We hear solutions for healthcare challenges from frontline workers and healthcare professionals across the board, only to learn that their voices are consistently ignored, downplayed, and dismissed. What the unions have showed us is they've shown us that if the relationship is toxic, you need to put in boundaries and then walk away.
Yukon Health Minister Tracy Ann McPhee responded that the parties had been working well together, hiring a record number of nurses and other healthcare workers. She also defended her government's record, saying the previous government did not invite the unions to the table in the first place. Voters across the Yukon are getting ready to select mayors and councils. Last night, 3 rural municipalities held community forums. Cheryl Kawaja has more.
As is often the case across the North, when you live in a small town, you know most people and what's going on in town. Interest in municipal politics was evident at debates held in Dawson City, Faro, and Haines Junction. Haines Junction had one of the biggest turnouts, with 100 people showing up either online or in person. 7 candidates are in a race for 4 council seats, and 3 people hope to be mayor.
Most of you know me as a former mayor and chief administrative officer, so I'm not going to waste my 3 minutes talking about me.
It's a place where I'd like to see the opportunity for people to spend, if they choose to, from birth till, their twilight years here, because their needs are being met. They feel connected, they feel supported.
Haines Junction's growing and is going to continue to grow, and I'd like to be a part of that. I'd like to keep Haines Junction the small town that it is, but with the modern housing and amenities that are being offered to us.
In Faro, about 50 people turned up to hear from candidates. There are 2 mayoral candidates, incumbent Jack Bowers and Lisa Schneider, and 8 people running for council. Chatting with some of the candidates from Faro, they tell me that rising costs are a huge factor, inflation and aging infrastructure. And really, those are issues that many communities are facing across the territory. In Dawson City, incumbent Bill Kendrick is hoping for another term. He's being challenged by 2 other candidates, Sue Lancaster, who was at the debate, and Stephen Johnson, who was not. 10 people are vying for 4 council seats. And those candidates all heard from voters concerned about issues like childcare, local health services, and housing in the Klondike. Municipal elections are now a little more than a week away, so voters still have time to find out where candidates stand on issues before making a final decision. Cheryl Kawaja, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Fort Simpson residents are also heading to the polls soon. They'll vote for mayor in 2 weeks. Incumbent Sean Welly and former village councillor Les Wright are both vying for the position. Welly has been the mayor of the community for 4 non-consecutive terms. He says the community has made significant progress over the years, including improvements in infrastructure, services, and financial management. Welly also takes pride in not having increased property taxes or water rates during his last 2 terms. He says he's running again to continue the work he's already started.
And one of them would be to finish a community plan which would help to identify where our future health center would be built and where a new 48-unit elders facility would be built as well. These are big issues for our community, and they involve a lot of work to make sure that everyone is properly represented in the community plan.
He's running for mayor to increase transparency and community involvement. One of Wright's key priorities is to hold more community meetings and ensure that both the council and the public are part of critical discussions.
Transparency from the village is going to be number one. We're going to have more community meetings, community consultations, and transparency with council also, because you just don't seem to have that right now.
Wright says he also wants to focus on other key issues like housing, drug problems, and homelessness. The other 8 people who ran for councillor were acclaimed. The election for mayor is on October 21st. Business leaders from Canadian cities are in Ottawa today, sounding the alarm. They say their downtown cores aren't safe, and they want the federal government to help. David Thurton reports.
Their leaders say problems such as addictions, mental health, and homelessness are not just Vancouver or Toronto issues. They're now nationwide problems that have gotten worse since COVID-19.
This was a trajectory we were on, but definitely the pandemic accelerated it. And especially in the last couple of years, as more people are coming back to our downtowns, coming back to commercial main streets, there is real challenges that we're facing on our streets that small businesses are facing day to day, whether they're feeling, how do they keep their employees safe? How do employers keep their workers safe?
The business leaders want to see changes to Canada's bail laws to keep offenders behind bars. Amendments that don't just target violent offenders, but repeat offenders involved in shoplifting and other retail crime. The International Downtown Association Canada cautions, though, that jail is not the only solution.
Jail might not be the answer for a lot of folks. They might do, a short sentence, but then what is the plan? Are they in a state that they can go back into the community and not cause further harm to the community? Or do they need to be in some sort of bridge housing? Do they need other supports when they're released? And I think most Canadians would be shocked by how little care and how little planning goes into post-release.
The group is calling for investments in mental health and addiction supports and also housing. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
Yellowknife has been dealing with a homelessness crisis all year. And with temperatures dropping fast, advocates are worried many people will be forced to sleep outside this winter. The Salvation Army Men's Shelter recently got funding for 8 new beds, but the organization's executive director is warning that's only a small fraction of what's needed. He says at least 40 to 50 people are sleeping outside right now in Yellowknife, and the Salvation Army is already turning away about 15 people a night. Tony Brichette says he's worried it's a problem that may soon become deadly.
I typically will come down towards the center around 6:30 in the morning, and mainly because we have people who sleep in the thrift store dumpster, and that gets picked up between 6:30 and 7. So one of us will walk by just to make sure there's nobody there, and the worst case scenario happens. We have them in every crevice outside the building, every doorway. They'll grab old clothing and that from the dumpster, and they'll sleep there. So typically, what we do in the mornings, I'll walk by. We won't interrupt them because, again, they may not be in the best frame of mind, but I look to see that they're breathing, That's all. And if we come up against somebody we can't quite tell, you might have to nudge them or something. But it's an awful way to think that this is the way people are sleeping every morning. And it's awful to think that if I don't get a chance to walk down early in the morning, could the worst happen.
The new beds at the Salvation Army will open next week. The Northwest Territories government told CBC it's looking at all possible options for shelter space.
He was completely unaccountable.
Prince Andrew never had somebody say the word no.
The Queen adored him more than anybody else.
This whole story is about the abuse of power.
We've got emails, we've got photographs, we've got witnesses.
Wow. Ordinary people turn a small investment into big bucks.
I'm in it to win it.
Do you think Mummy and Daddy are going to double their money? That's what I thought.
Why, hello.
You want it? I got it.
This is so cool.
Focus, focus, focus.
Here we go.
Oh, imagine how good the TV's going to look now.
Good God!
This is incredible.
Did you know this?
As if.
Could the pressure be any higher?
Every week, the issues that matter to Canadians.
Cost of living hurts everybody.
Connecting politics to people.
Win, win, win.
We are not going back.
Sundays, join me for Rosemary Barton Live.
It makes sense that they get a larger share, or does it?
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
All of this, just single detached homes?
Yes.
What do we know? I think we can explain.
About that with Andrew Chang. Watch free on CBC Gem.
It's got to come from the heart.
I will cry. You're so together.
How much more connected do you want to be?
See you there.
Guess what? Pinch me. Yes!
Wildlife officials are urging Nunavut to report any sightings of dead seabirds. Environment and Climate Change Canada says it's aware of social media reports across the territory of bird carcasses, but only 2 die-off events have officially been reported since July. The cause of those is yet to be determined.
The challenge we have with those particular die-off events, seabirds die-off events, is that it is very hard and very time limited to retrieve the sample on carcasses when they are floating generally on the open ocean. So fast reporting really helps the chances to get successful sampling.
Residents are urged not to touch any dead wild animals. Instead, they should contact their local conservation officer. So far this year, there are no confirmed cases of avian flu across the north, including in Nunavut. There were 5 cases in Nunavut between 2022 and 2023. 7 tourism companies in the north have received funding as part of a federal initiative to support the industry. The only Nunavut company to receive funding is Arctic Bay Adventures. It got $250,000. Chris Mitchell is the company's general manager. He says the investment comes at a good time as many of their assets are aging.
Their snow machines were getting old, and we were down to like 5 operational snowmobiles out of 11. And these machines are driven hard. They're pulling heavy Comatics. They're going fast distances and over rough conditions. So they have to be able to handle cold conditions right up to very warm, 10 degrees above on ice with water on it. And not every machine can provide that service, and they get wore out pretty quick.
Mitchell says they'll use the money to upgrade their equipment, train their staff, and support the community. Chef Shane Chartrand has been making his name in Edmonton's cooking scene. He's competed in several reality cooking shows, and in 2019, he published his first cookbook. The Cree chef leans into his Indigenous culture when he's creating his gourmet dishes. He sat down with the CBC's Mark Connolly to talk about his culinary craft.
You've come from this place of, obviously loving your culture and loving Indigenous food. And over the years, how much further has that gone from when you were first starting out and just showing people what the basics were? Have you taken it another step, do you feel?
Yeah, I do feel. I feel that what I've done has been a step in more in the higher end of Indigenous cuisine, a little deeper into the roots, more than bannock burgers and stuff like that. And I'm not. And by the way, just so you know, I'm not making fun of bannock. It's not something for me to say. That's part of our heritage. Our ancestors and our elders feed us this. But that's not what I mean. I'm talking more grounded, more to this land, like reindeer moss and lichen and berries that are a little bit more closer to the earth. That's what I celebrate, a little more intent. And yeah, so I mean, it's really hard to be able to take something and uplift it. And that's really, truly what makes sense to me, because I'm able to travel and go to all these nations all across Canada, all across the U.S., and meet all these people that give me information bundles, and then I get to share them with the world.
When you talk to other Indigenous chefs, are you drawing from each other as well?
Yeah, we have to do that because we got to keep that stimulation of community between us. Also, it's because it is our culture, so we understand it a little bit better. So there's questions that we can push aside because we already know. Yeah. But then we can talk a little bit deeper about our stories and where we all come from. You talk about the Iroquois, you talk about or the Blackfoot or Haida. And we're all from different areas, right? So there's a lot that we can draw upon from each other. The one thing I'm a very fearless person. I'll just do as I choose, without any regard, no matter how nerving it might be. I mean, try going to Cairo, 40 hours in the air alone in an area where no one speaks English. So I do have moments like that, and if they choose to follow me by the grit that I may have, then good for them, because I want everyone to succeed. And that's not just Indigenous people, that people that actually really like our culture and really love it and follow it, and they can jump on board too.
Youth fiddlers from across the Yukon are sharing music once again. They're building on the enthusiasm from this summer's Pan-Northern Fiddle Gathering, where more than 100 youth came together to play in Whitehorse. For the first time, Fiddlers in Dawson City hosted young players from Mayo, Whitehorse, and Haines Junction for a weekend of music. Daniel Lapp was one of the guest instructors.
So there was about 35 kids here this weekend, and it's the first time it's happened quite like this. There's something very special happening around here in Dawson, I think, and in the Yukon in general, but there's an old story up in the Yukon of fiddle music, and I think that gives it, kind of this a depth and certainly a focus, learning about the old Crow fiddlers and some of these traditions. The conversations, how to keep going, how to keep it alive, the funding, the infrastructure, curriculum, all those kind of things.
While the kids are learning about fiddles, some adults in Whitehorse are learning their very own special skill. It's one that'll come in handy in the next few months. The workload will pick up for a very famous man who wears a bright red jacket, and he is going to need some help. That, of course, is where Santa School comes in.
They have great bells, good sounding bells.
We are launching our Santa School for 2024. It's our second attempt at a local Santa School here in the Yukon. And for us, it's an important event to kind of encourage more people to engage actively in the spirit of Christmas.
Started a year ago. I canoed from Whitehorse to Dawson in September, and my beard came in white. So I just kept it going, and anyways, I feel like I didn't choose Santa. Santa chose me.
Sometimes you come and they want to pull your beard, the children, you know, they want to see if it is real, you know, and a good experience, you know. You just allow them to draw it. Yeah. Because you try to protect it, but then they need to touch it.
And well, I've done this before, but CBC announced this workshop was on, so I wanted to come and learn how to do it better.
Just little ideas of how to help a child who suddenly becomes afraid or cries, how to reassure the parents that, you know, it's okay, because there can be circumstances that can be, you know, just upsetting for everybody. And so we're sharing how to handle those things as well.
When I look back and try to think of myself in the image that I had then, I would go, what a horrible, you know, example of a put-together Santa with an old costume, but it didn't make any difference. The kids wanted to engage, and they did. And so we found here, too, that's exactly the same thing. It's meeting the kids where they are and inviting them to join you in celebrating the spirit of the season.
Santa Claus is real. You've read the New York Times famous article, and so we just have to keep the spirit going.
Enter into the spirit of the season, the caring, the sharing, the sense of joy, being able to do that and bring your personality into that role. A lot of the externals just help, but it's really what you have inside to share that I think is important.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
Maybe you were subconsciously worried about our little threesome.
Ew.
No, I don't mean it in that same way.
You guys can move out and get an apartment together when I'm gone. Wait, did you mean it? Mom!
You're good thieves. Best in town.
Thank you.
It is a small town.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes your world.
All right.
Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We are just approaching Gaza.
With local CBC Radio 1 Live to connect us closer to home. It's news you can trust, delivered when you want, where you want. On the CBC News app. Download for free.
Hi, friends. Guess what? Pinch me. Ooh. Mind blown. Yes!
every week the issues that matter to Canadians.
Cost of living hurts everybody.
Connecting politics to people.
We are not going back.
Join me for Rosemary Barton Live.